to use vetted curriculum so that, officials say that they're using the strongest curricula possible. But these new resources have gotten mixed reviews from teachers, so I'm going to be watching how that rollout goes.
Let's talk here about the free preschool program. Many parents of young children have been watching the back and forth between the mayor and the council and other activists over the future of the city's free preschool program, especially for 3-year-olds. Where does all of that stand?
Yeah, after cutting early childhood funding, the mayor faced a huge backlash from parents. And he's restored some of that funding, not all of it. But he promised all families that applied for 3K slots for their little kids that they would get one. And then when offers went out, there were thousands of families who were waitlisted. Now the mayor says everyone who applied did actually get a spot. But I've heard from a few parents who only got spots far away from where they live that would take too long, in a different borough to get there. Or they found out too late after they already paid for private daycare. And this has become a real political issue and a potential liability for the mayor. He recently held a press conference, trying to tout how he's restructured early childhood and invested in it. And he has expanded certain programs, for kids with in special education preschool programs or for immigrant families. But there are a lot of parents who say it's still not enough to keep the city affordable for them so that they can stay here.
That's how Jessica Gould will know you'll be watching this and a whole lot more this school year. Jessica Gould, WNYC and Gothamist education reporter. Jessica, thank you.
Thank you.
Support for WNYC comes from the International Center of Photography presenting Photo Book Fest, September 6th, 7th, and 8th, featuring 70 local and international publishers. More information at pbf.icp.org. Sponsoring WNYC means reaching hundreds of thousands of engaged and discerning listeners who've made our shows part of their daily routine. Find more on sharing your business message with WNYC's unique audience at wnyc.org/sponsorship.
Marketplace Morning Report is coming up next, and then in 10 minutes at 9 o'clock, it's the BBC NewsHour on WNYC. Let's check in with London and see what they're working on. Hello, London.
Good morning, WNYC. I'm Rebecca Kesby, and on today's NewsHour, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is due in gang-ravaged Haiti under tight security, but what can he offer the transitional government? Why Afghan women are using song to protest, and can a green prescription be as effective as therapy? That's BBC NewsHour coming up at 9 on WNYC.
The economy as a Monet.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by C3 Generative AI. Verified, traceable answers, secure, hallucination-free, LLM-agnostic, IP liability-free. C3.ai. This is Enterprise AI.
From Marketplace, I'm Sabri Benishore, in for David Brancaccio. Payroll company ADP reports that private sector employment increased by 99,000 people last month. That is 30,000 less than the month before. And when we get hard data like that about the economy, it is a snapshot. But there's another way of looking at the economy that's more of an impressionist painting. The Beige Book is a report the Federal Reserve puts out every few months after having chats with business owners, labor leaders, nonprofits, executives, people with important perspectives sprinkled throughout the economy. The latest edition, released yesterday, paints a picture of a softening U.S. economy. 3/4 of Fed districts reported flat or falling economic activity in the last 2 months, as Marketplace's Henry Epp reports.
In Kentucky, marina owners told Fed officials that fewer people were renting boats this summer, and those who did take them out often anchored in coves to go swimming rather than cruising around to save on gas. That pretty much sums up economic activity observed by the Fed in the last few months. Some of us still splurged on travel, but even then we were finding ways to pinch pennies. Consumer spending slowed down in much of the country. So did manufacturing activity, and many areas saw weaker home sales and residential construction. And while not many companies laid people off, the job market was pretty flat, except for some skilled positions. As a labor official in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan put it, anyone with a commercial driver's license or mechanic license is still in high demand. I'm Henry Epp for Marketplace.
This week, the price of a Costco membership increased for the first time in 7 years from $60 a year to $65 a year. The company's also cracking down on membership sharing, kind of like how Netflix cracked down on password sharing. That is not really a coincidence, but a trend, Marketplace's Savannah Marr reports.
In 2017, Netflix famously tweeted, "Love is sharing a password."
They needed lots of people on the service, and they needed those people talking about the shows that they loved on the service.
Even if they weren't actually paying to watch, says David Offenberg, professor of entertainment finance at Loyola Marymount University. But around 2022,
once they had more or less everybody in the country watching Netflix one way or the other,
Offenberg says growth at all costs wasn't working anymore.
As soon as they started cracking down on passwords, we saw their revenue burst again.
Other streamers and other industries took note, says Amy Connery with the Subscribed Institute, a think tank focused on the subscription economy.
At some point, you're going to tap out of the number of memberships that you can sell,
especially as consumers rein in subscription spending. Connery says wellness apps, software companies, and yes, even bulk grocery warehouses are looking to grow subscriber revenue without necessarily gaining new subscribers. But raising fees and cracking down on sharing can be risky.
There's always the cancel button. There are always alternatives.
She says Costco is making deals like its $5 rotisserie chicken are enough to keep members around and turn the rest of us into paying customers. I'm Savannah Marr for Marketplace.
All right, let's do the numbers. Dow futures are pretty much flat. S&P futures down 0.2%. NASDAQ futures down 0.4%. The yield on the 10-year Treasury is 3.740%.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Angie, dedicated to helping homeowners find skilled pros to get home projects done well. Reviews, pricing, and booking at Angie.com or on the Angie app.
As divisive as politics can be, especially this election season, if you look hard enough, you can find some limited bipartisan focus on policies aimed at supporting families raising kids. Behind that may be a shift in economic research, the shift from looking at what happens to the parents when they get support to what happens to the kids when their parents get support in the long run. For more on this, we're joined now by Marketplace's senior economics contributor, Chris Farrell in St. Paul. Hi, Chris.
How you doing?
So just how much agreement do you see across party lines when it comes to economic support for families with kids?
There are deep divisions in the best ways to help struggling families and their children, but there does seem to be more child-centric initiatives in play on both the federal and state level. Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance, he says he'd like to more than double the current federal child tax credit to $5,000. Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris wants families with a newborn to get a $6,000 child tax credit and boost the credit for other kids in the family. Now, the details, they differ in important ways, of course, but the shared emphasis, it's intriguing.
Sometimes when there is a consensus on something in research, it does not necessarily translate to a consensus in politics on that issue. So I'm wondering, why do you think there is this slight alignment on the issue of children and families?
Economist and blogger Noah Smith, he notes that economic paradigms are more important as ways of thinking about policy rather than a list of actual policies. And I thought about that framing as while reviewing a National Bureau of Economic Research program report on the Conference on Children and Families. And the report notes that historically, research largely focused on the risk that unconditional support for low-income families, it might sustain rather than alleviate poverty.
That idea is something I remember hearing in decades past, the idea that helping people disincentivizes them from working. Does that actually hold any water when you look at it?
Many researchers these days, they find little effect on labor supply or marriage rates from safety net programs. Instead, academic research now puts a greater emphasis on investigating the long-term impact of safety net programs on children and their human capital development. And the research agenda in recent years has shown, and I quote from the summary, significant positive effects of safety net programs on short-run children outcomes as well as longer-term measures.
So if there has been a shift in the focus of economic research, focusing on the cost of caregiving, the potential gains for children from public policy, do you think that politicians are registering that and trying to fix it?
My sense is that everyone acknowledges that parents and families are really stretched. The kind of research we're talking about, it's an inspiration for ideas and policies with the best chance of healthy human capital development for children from families that live on low and unstable incomes.
Marketplace's senior economics contributor Chris Farrell, thank you as always.
Thanks a lot.
In New York, I'm Sabri Ben-Achour with the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.